Well, Macron and the Europeans got together, as we know, in Paris just last week and discussed these plans. And this was Emmanuel Macron presenting those plans to the Americans. And I think it's fair to say that it was decided the two people that should present this idea was the French. Of course, he has a good relationship with Macron and also the Brits. We know that Donald Trump also has a real affinity for the UK as well. I should say he hasn't really built the same kind of relationship with Keir Starmer yet that he has built with Macron. The Brito will be hoping that that will be happening when he visits on Thursday. But Macron brought that kind of the le bromance, as it was called back in Trump's first administration. He brought that back, despite them having some difficulties in the latter part of that administration. Macron has really tried to revive this. We saw this by Donald Trump being included at the Notre Dame reopening back in November. That was the first kind of buttering up, as it were, the reopening of the lines of communication, and it was on full display really at the White House. I think Macron will be pleased with the job that he did. Of course, I think Macron has that kind of banter that he has with Donald Trump, and that is something that Donald Trump likes as well. Macron is not somebody who's afraid to, give him a compliment, but then also check him as well when he needs to be fact-checked. We saw that live today in the Oval Office when Macron grabbed his hand and said, actually, Donald, that's not quite right. It's actually not just money that we've given to Ukraine, but we've paid a lot of it ourselves. And of course, Trump said, "Oh yeah, you could see it in his eyes." But there was a couple of moments throughout the day where Macron said things subtly as well to try to get across the point that perhaps Donald Trump had his figures skewed, especially the amount of money that the EU has given to Ukraine. So I think Macron will be pleased of the job that he's done today. The Europeans will be feeling that things have gotten slightly back on track, considering where we were 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now it kind of falls to Keir Starmer to see if he can continue off that base that Macron built on Monday.
Now, it has been clear ever since Donald Trump started his second term that the current Trump presidency is quite different from the first one. Where does this leave Europe vis-a-vis Washington on Ukraine?
Well, there have been some big developments today. I'm going to tell you some reporting that I got from a couple of sources that were kind of speaking on condition of anonymity to tell me these kind of discussions. What I've been told is that the plan now is to have a kind of Gaza-style ceasefire deal. So they want it in two parts. The first part is scheduled to be a ceasefire, which would mean that, of course, there'll be no more firing of Russian drones and rockets into Ukraine, no more shooting on the battlefields. But the key part of that is that a European peacekeeping force would go into Ukraine to maintain that ceasefire, to ensure that it is being upheld, but also to build the Ukrainian army's defenses in case the ceasefire is broken. But of course, the idea of having a European peacekeeping force there is by its very nature intended to stop Russia from breaking this ceasefire deal, because if there are any casualties among those peacekeeping forces, that will bring Europe into a much more direct conflict with Russia. Now, it should be said, of course, Vladimir Putin for years now has said that he will not accept European troops on the soil in Ukraine. So if it is indeed true what Donald Trump says and that he's discussed this with Vladimir Putin and Putin is okay with that, that is a massive departure from where Putin was over the course of the last 3 years. So this really now is a deal, if this is going to go ahead, which is kind of good for all sides. The second part of the deal is going to be the mineral deal that is on the table and that Donald Trump wants Volodymyr Zelensky to sign this week or next week. And the Ukrainians want this because, of course, that means that the US is going to have a vested interest in staying in Ukraine and ensuring that those minerals are safe. So it's a good deal for America because they get $500 billion worth of minerals and they don't have to put US troops on the ground. The Europeans get to end this conflict and also have a force inside Ukraine which could potentially stop the war from spiraling. And Russia will end up spinning this, no doubt, to their own population as some kind of victory, even though in the eyes of the West it clearly won't be. But just think about the fact that if peacekeepers are going to be in Ukraine, that is a massive shift for Vladimir Putin. And I think that's quite telling about how much he wants this war to be over.